Welcome back to Talking Dragon Age, the show where I talk about Dragon Age. Today we're talking about Antiva and the role it may play in the future. Antiva began as a city-state, maybe part of the Free Marches, though it is kind of far from the rest of the cities. The country began when other settlements in the region formed alliances with one another and Antiva City. So there was this dwarf named Baragrand the Bold, exiled from the dwarven city of Gundar, and eventually made his way to what would become Antiva. He showed the humans dwarven smithing secrets and helped them armor up their ships. Much of Antiva's success can be attributed to this guy helping out, though we don't know how much of this is just legend. So Antiva officially became a nation in -30 Ancient. Antiva's merchant navy was critical to its growth. Piracy was always a big thing in the Rialto Bay, so it stands to reason these pirates were paid off to leave merchants alone. That sort of thing continues to this day. The Felicissima Armada is basically a confederation of pirate ships, each ship being a nation in itself. They often fight with one another unless there is an outside threat, in which case they set aside their differences to defend the Armada as a whole. Merchants in the area, as not to be targeted by these pirates, usually just pay them off in advance. I see it kinda like taxes or tolls. You know, you go through another nation's territory, you gotta pay the toll, and if you don't, they could seize your goods. I don't see these pirates as being any different than that. The sea is their territory. I imagine these ships are sometimes hired to escort merchants, like privateers, but that is not confirmed. So, Antiva doesn't really have an official military, but I think this leads to some misconceptions. Just because they don't have a formal military, that doesn't mean they don't have any armed forces defending the nation. The merchant princes, the ruling class of Antiva, each have their own private armies, mercenaries. I imagine it's the same on sea, they hire privateers to defend their waters. So, it's not unified, but if they were to be invaded, they would have an army to defend them. Not a great one, but it would be there. For the coin. Same with the privateers of the Felicissima Armada. It's powerful enough to give the Qunari pause. Probably not beat them, but they would do some damage and give the rest of Thedas a better chance. So let's talk a bit more about the merchant princes and the ruling class of Antiva. Antiva technically has a monarchy whose bloodline has been unbroken for over 2,000 years. However, the monarch is considered to not have much power at all, and Antiva is actually ruled by the wealthiest business people, known as the merchant princes. And then there are the Antivan Crows. The Antivan Crows' reputation is that of the most deadly and efficient assassins in Thedas. Just to be clear, they lose every single time we fight them. With the exception of Lasef from An Old Crow's New Tricks, and maybe Callian from Last Flight, I can't recall a time we've seen them live up to their reputation on a mission. Even Lucanus Delamorte wasn't what I'd call efficient in the one story we saw him in. Not that that was a bad thing in his case, but still, it's almost a running joke that the Crows suck at their jobs. The Crows really deserve their own video, though. Suffice to say, they are feared by all of Thedas, including the Qunari. Whether that fear is warranted is dubious. So it appears we'll be seeing Antiva in Dreadwolf. I'm expecting intrigue, assassins, and pirates, but there's a few things I'm particularly interested in. For one thing, the Antivan Dalish are supposedly more violent than elsewhere in Thedas. I can see many of those clans siding with Solas, and only a handful of people leaving their clans in protest. The Dalish are known to rig up forest marionettes to look like monsters to scare people away from their camps. That sounds super cool. I wanna see a part of the game where you're going through foggy woods, you hear creepy noises, you see figures moving, stuff like that. Then at the end, you find it was just the Dalish pulling some theatrics. But, as badass as that sounds, if the Dalish truly are more violent than elsewhere in Thedas, why would they bother with theatrics to scare people away, instead of just killing them? It could be a thing like if they kill one human, more will come. But since the humans know the Dalish set up these marionettes, wouldn't that happen anyway? It just seems like scaring people away from their camps is a way to avoid killing people. which contrasts with their supposed violent nature. This could absolutely be on purpose, where the Dalish's reputation is not the truth. Or there are some clans that prefer scaring people, and others that are more violent. But it could also be that they just do both, scare people and be violent, with little rhyme or reason. It's just interesting to ponder their motives here. The next big plot point that comes up has to do with the monarchy. Perhaps the monarch wants to reclaim some power from the merchant princes. That could potentially be beneficial for the war effort against the Qunari. I think it would be cool if we have to pick a side. Maybe we have to undermine the merchant's power, or we have to disgrace the monarch. But the monarchy of Antiva has had some cool stuff going on in recent years. At the start of the Dragon Age, there was a war of succession called the Three Queens era. We don't know anything more than that, but it sounds super cool. It's worth noting that the Crows had an infamous job called the Three Brides contract, also at the beginning of the Dragon Age, that brought a ton of coin to the assassins responsible. It sounds like they could be related, but we know next to nothing about either of these events, so it's really up in the air. But additionally, remember Zevran's old lover, Rena? He talks about how she was a crow and he loved her, but they thought she had betrayed them, so he had to kill her. But the details of this series of events hint at a much larger plot. Rena was an illegitimate child of Prince Estefan. Many crows are illegitimate children of the royal family, so that's not that weird. But Rena was apparently a legitimate heir to King Natali. I guess legitimate and illegitimate just stop mattering at a certain point, both in Dragon Age and reality. Anyway, this is important because there is a faction in Antiva known as the Rosso Noche, the Red Knight. They are thought of as a cult, but they were responsible for the attempt to put Rena on the throne, and that is the only action of theirs we know of. It could be that they are just a rebel group looking to restore power to the monarchy. Or they have ulterior motives and just want a puppet on the throne. Who knows? What I do know is that a group called the Red Knight looking to gain power in the plutocracy of Antiva just sounds super cool. The Rosso Noche. So all in all, a bunch of groups are trying to gain control of Antiva. Given the Qunari are already putting pressure on them and sabotaging the crows, this is not good. I'm guessing we're going to need to decide which group we want to help gain control so Antiva can stand united. So I guess that about does it. So that's it for now, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to comment and like, and remember, Tala Nadas.